All right. Hey, how's it going, folks? Welcome to the Coach's Corner here at Benchwarmers Restaurant and Delivery. Nate Mullins, and I've got special guest Judd Lutz joining me on the program today. Judd, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Not too bad, Coach. We're sitting here in the back patio at Benchwarmers. What a beautiful night.
Great night.
You couldn't ask for better weather for the debut episode here. I want to thank you for spending some time here with us.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me, and thank you for what you're starting. But it doesn't feel like you're starting, just because it's been really successful already, my man. And
Let's say we're
so
building.
many great things. So yeah, oh yeah, always building. We will be building for quite some time. But thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for spending some time with us on date night. That's important. I know I don't want to spend too much time with you tonight, but we do want to have a little bit of a chit chat because I mean, there's a lot of stuff to discuss. It's week one is in the rearview mirror. You got a lot of things that you guys have to look at on film. Obviously, film is done now, and now it's time for prep.
Yep.
You're into preparation now for Springfield this week. Now, I want to take a look back just a little bit. We'll talk about the game last week, but I want to talk about going into that game. There were some things that I'd heard in different areas of the community. Obviously, everybody knows about coaching ties. Everybody knows that there's ties there with Chad was a coach when you were playing here in Columbian. He was involved with the program, and you guys have got obviously friendship ties. You're involved with his family. You know everybody in the Long family. You guys have a long tradition together.
Yeah.
So talk about that going into that game, what that meant for you. Obviously, last year is last year, but this year, talk about this year. What it meant for you going into that game. Or was it just another game?
Well, I mean, yeah, the ties definitely run deep. First off, Chad's wife, Jen Long, was my babysitter way back in the day, also from Greenville, Ohio.
Wow.
Her parents, my parents, in Card Club back in the day. Her younger brothers, I played football with them, ran track with them. They were like my brothers growing up. And then, yeah, here comes Chad kind of into the scene back in the day, my junior year, his first year coaching, just graduated from Bowling Green. And the very next year was our defensive coordinator. And then obviously we stayed connected, and I would always root for him and his coaching stays, and most of which at Columbian in some capacity, wrestling-wise, football-wise, and then a period when he kind of moved on elsewhere. And still is a great friend. And it's obviously I'm very happy for him leading a big football tradition school like Fremont Ross. Take a lot of pride in what they do, and obviously we're excited, and there's competitiveness. Nobody wants to lose, and it's to a mutual friend. Like it's even a little bit more so because like you really want to beat your friend, but you're also happy when they're successful too. So. And again, adding to the twist of the story, our defense coordinator, my very, very good friend, Sean Conley, is also really, really good friends with him too. Like they literally go on family vacations together. Oh yeah. So, long story short, we wanted to kick their you-know-whats, and they wanted to kick our you-know-whats, and then game's over. We shake hands. It's really bitter for 364 days a year, but week 2 is here. It's not the Super Bowl, so
that's right.
We got to move on, win, lose, or draw, and looked at the tape like you said, and got a lot of things we got to work on, but also had a lot of things go well too.
So when you looked at that tape, obviously Caden Holmes stands out big time. The kid made some plays in crucial situations. I'd say big time players make big time plays in big time situations, and he was one of those guys for them on Friday night. But you guys did a really good job containing their passing game. I felt like the downfield threat that we had heard about coming into that game that needed to be contained, you guys did a really good job with that. You contained the downfield threat that I thought was going to be really probably your toughest task all night, was to contain that passing game with those 2 all-state receivers and the all-state quarterback. You guys did a pretty good job. I'd say, all things considered, that was the bright spot for me on defense for you guys, was containing the aerial attack for Fremont Ross.
Yeah. You put on the tape, and a lot of times we had it bottled up in some way, shape, or form, maybe run game, and he just did something special.
Yeah.
Maybe a running back, bounced off of one guy, and he's getting wrapped up and gets, that 2 or 3 yards additional, and you can't sell out necessarily against the run because, you got 2 all-state wide receivers to worry about, and also the quarterback, run game, pass game, scramble game. So, stats that stuck out, they had 380 yards of offense. We had 340.
It's not too much of an advantage.
Yeah, we gave up a little bit too much on the ground in the run game, but they had 45 of them on their last drive, and they're kind of selling out trying to make a play happen. So, it came down to explosive plays and turnovers. We take a lot of pride in measuring our success on that. When you win that combination number, we win the game 96% of the time. And so we were -3 in the turnover battle, and we were -3 in the explosive play margin as well. And so we're at -6 for the game, and there's a reason we went to lose by the margin we lost at. So a lot to fix, but at the same point, a lot of bright spots when you put on the film and what guys were doing and what we did schematically as well. Just got to execute a really, really high level against a really good team like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, going into the game, I'm watching warm-ups, and I'm thinking, that big kid has got to be a linebacker or a defensive lineman. There's no way he's running the ball. And he was running back for them. Calandre Jones, I mean, you want to talk about a beast. You watch him on the sideline, he looks like an NFL running back, 6 foot, 225. The way he was running the ball on Friday night, early, you guys did a pretty good job, especially in the interior of their, offensive running attack. You did a really good job bottling up that rushing attack. But he did a great job of just bouncing off of tackles and then picking up those extra yards, fighting for those extra yards. Now, I did see a few broken tackles out there, but you guys did a pretty good job of swarming to the ball and limiting those extra yardage or those extra, opportunities for him. But he still ends up with over 100 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Just what kind of a monster was he to try to bring down?
Yeah, obviously we saw him on film in some scrimmages, he didn't play last year for them, but stuck out size-wise. Didn't look as, I'll be honest, didn't look as nimble as he did in the scrimmages as he did against us. He moved really well, made some really good cuts, so that was a little surprising. But yeah, he was a load to bring down. We knew that, and we needed to gang tackle or go low. And sometimes we were kind of hitting him in between, like we kind of wanted to hit him low, but also hit him high enough to maybe drive him back, and so we got caught, or maybe he was a little bit faster than we thought. So instead of having a really good angle, now you're kind of a little bit of a worse angle, and now he's hitting you with his big arms. And so things we got to work on. Obviously, you got to, you're going to have probably, hopefully, knock on wood, more missed tackles in a week 1 game, just because we don't tackle to the ground a ton in practice. We just don't.
Yeah.
We want to stay fresh. We want to get in good positions. And so hopefully we fix those things and get guys like him down here in the future.
Now, that tackling to the ground mentality, that you guys don't do that at practice, that's normal in this area, right? That's not something that you just do. That's something that all high schools do, right?
Yeah. We do tackle to the ground, but it's in a controlled environment, in drills. Very rarely like on an 11-on-11 situation where guys are going to get rolled up on and everything. And it's for a lot of reasons. It's to keep contact down a little bit in practice. It's to keep the things efficient so that you can run more plays instead of picking up everybody off the ground all the dang time.
True.
It's to keep energy up, all sorts of things. And so, not the game I necessarily played in high school wise. We were maybe a little bit more physical, but
no
not
Oklahoma
much.
drill every day.
I talked with Coach Gilbert over the weekend. We obviously talk a lot, and we had a Hall of Fame banquet, and so we were together a lot on Saturday, and he's at the game, and I kind of was talking to him about tackling back in the day, and I couldn't quite remember how much we did or didn't, and so he said, yeah, we stayed up a lot in practice. We didn't tackle the ground a whole lot either, too. And then it was really emphasized when I was in college, playing the college game, and very rarely in the program that Mountain Union, they're pretty good. So, modeling some of that and what we did then my first high school stop at Avon High School too. So, I don't know necessarily what everybody else does to a T, but talking to coaches and visiting with a lot of guys, it's similar model.
Yeah, it's pretty standard. I heard somebody say during the week, they don't really tackle at practice. They need to get more physical. It's like, well, that's pretty much standard all the way across the board. You're only allowed 1 day of contact per week, right?
It's down to
not
minutes.
even an hour, right?
It's down to minutes, and it's not too often.
Yeah.
We never even get close to it, obviously. But, they're trying to promote the game in the right way.
That's exactly it, and you're trying to be safe. You want these kids' careers to last long past when they're done playing football. That's the idea. You don't want them to go away from the game being in debilitating injuries for the rest of their lives. That's why we try to teach the game safe way.
Yep.
But a couple other guys that stood out to me on game day on Friday. When I'm looking at the game film and I go back and watch, obviously we're watching our stream back and just kind of doing our own homework on our own selves. But then I watch and I see guys that just flash. Connor Musa was one of those guys.
Yes, he was.
Man, he was fun to watch, and he was all over the place, but especially in the backfield, making life miserable for that Fremont Ross offensive line. Who, before the game, I'm watching and I'm like, where did they get these kids? They're just mammoths. Some of these kids, I mean, they had a kid 6'6", 330 pounds, 6'5", 300. I mean, mammoths, kids down there on the line. Talk about how he was able to make an impact in the early and at the end part of that game. I mean, that's one of those kids that really stood out to me.
Yeah. Obviously, he's a senior. He's never started a senior game in his career. Has always been a big kid and really has always bought into the weight room. And Coach Joe Stacy's done an incredible job. We tweaked some things this off season where we have to get some bigger bodies. Like for the last 5+ years, we haven't had a ton of big guys. We've had them sporadically, but not as many as we kind of have right now in this year. And we're kind of looking around and early in the off season, seeing like we got some size, but it doesn't move well necessarily. So we can't have a bunch of refrigerators out there. So we want to be big, we want to be strong, but we got to move. And so kudos to Joe Stacy, really implementing plyometrics early and often, clear back into the wintertime when we weren't necessarily outside or inside. And for a kid like Connor Musa and a lot of these big guys, they're popping off the film now with their, we call it twitch. We call it explosiveness. And it is evident. His knockback as a defensive lineman and agility to make plays instead of just leaning in a gap or taking up space. You can't have too many guys like that in today's football game. So, we kind of started the season like, man, how's a kid like that maybe going to play against a speedy team like Fremont Ross with the ball constantly moving around? No, he can get it done.
Oh, yeah.
He's now just not standing. He's doing a lot of things, and a number of guys. But kudos to Connor Musa, stud. We call him the monster. Had a great
Rightfully
game.
so.
Had a great game. Going to have a great season. Stays healthy.
He's a monster on the field, but man, I tell you, he's quite the young man off the field.
Gentle giant.
He really is.
Yes.
But then another guy that flashed to me before we get into this next opponent, I just want to talk about Carter Groves. I mean, he had an outstanding game as well, making a name for himself in the backfield. Now, you guys were absent a couple of leaders going into that game. I saw Zane Smith, I saw Talib on the sideline, both in street clothes. What does it mean for a guy like Carter Groves, another leader on that team? He knows he's got to step up. He knows he's got to fill that role going into that game. And for him to step up, and to carry some of that load, what does that mean for the locker room going forward?
Yeah, him as well as many others. Senior year, elected captain by his teammates. Well respected amongst his peers and coaches. Just goes about his business the right way. Not the biggest kid, not the fastest kid, but he's big enough. He's fast enough for sure. And got a high motor, high energy, and it shows. And he comes off the tape offensively. Did some really good things against a really good football team, and off to a pretty good start here for his senior year.
Nice. All right, so let's get into it. We got to talk about Springfield, Coach. It's coming up on the schedule. It's the next one up, and we can't be there because there's some kind of exclusive agreement, streaming. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah,
anyways,
another network.
Yeah, we won't talk about that. We won't talk about that. Anyways, we wanted to be there. We can't be there, but we got you here, and I wanted to get you on and talk about this matchup because people want to know what's going on. What is this Springfield team like? I looked at the roster. Or I took a look at the the stats from last year. Went back to Joe Itel, looked at the record and all that. I don't think the record really tells the whole story. They went 1-8 last year. Obviously, they had to cancel the game against you guys. COVID protocol, but with them, I think the record doesn't tell the whole story because you start looking at some of the games that they played against some of the opponents that they have to play. This is a Division II football team, and they have to play some tough opponents on their schedule every year. Talk about this Springfield team. They played tough against Sandusky last week. Obviously, the Blue Streaks come away with the win, but they were up early in that game. They showed some positive signs. What are you guys looking for out of this Springfield team?
So, first, history is everything. So, back in 2020, early in COVID, I think it just had started, and we had this opening for our 2021 season. and they had just hired the head coach now, Jerry Bell.
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry Bell took Whitmer to 2 state championship games. So this guy knows what he's doing. He's a really good football coach. So he's just getting there and took over for a guy named Pat Gucciardo. And Coach Jucardo stepped down only because his son is now a quarterback at the University of Toledo. And
Okay.
he had the program rolling. And so they reached out. We had an opening, and he reached out to us because they also had an opening, and we initially signed a 4-year deal with these guys. So, because I didn't have a whole lot of choices, let's just say that. And there's not a lot of people around here who want to play us anymore, which is a compliment, but also a burden. And so, I looked at them and what they were coming out of, tried to do a little bit of research. So I said, sure, sign us up for 4 years of this, and let's go. And then obviously we did not play them in 2021, so this is going to be year 2 of 4. And then they hopped in a conference, so this is actually the one and only year we're going to play them because they're going to have conference points the next 2 years. But
So what was a 4-year deal has now become a one matchup.
1-year deal. So long story short to say, you look at their roster, and they got good numbers and they got some good sized kids. He also is going 2 platoons, so he has 11 starters on offense and 11 different starters on defense.
Oh,
I think he's doing
wow.
that model from, Whitmer being at a bigger school, they're a bigger school too, trying to really take, 22 of his best athletes and have them really learn, a couple things really, really well, and get
Smart.
in depth into it. And so, again, a team that we are only seeing some scrimmage tape and week 1, and so their size pops off the charts.
Yeah.
They're big up front, both sides of the ball. They have athletes in the perimeter game that run really well, do some really good things. So they're going to be a challenge because they're going to be really fresh throughout the entire game. We got to be ready to go because obviously we have some kids who we share on both sides of the ball a little bit. I still think they're kind of figuring out who can do what, just like we are. And so they're going to make a big jump from that week 1 game versus that we witness and break down versus Industrial. And tell our kids, listen, that team that you're playing, you're going to get a better version of them, just like they're seeing us against Fremont. We're going to be a better version of that. So we can't read into anything and results too much by any opponent, and that's exactly how we're off to the week so far, preparation-wise.
And that's how do you approach this with your team? Obviously, you guys coming off a loss, you got revenge on your minds, you got a chip on your shoulder, whatever you want to call it. You're looking to put that behind you, but also, you've got this Springfield opponent in front of you that going into this game, you got a 1-8 record last year. They coming off a loss. What do you say to your guys to not overlook an opponent like this?
I think it's just the mentality and the way we work year in and year out, and the kids know what preparation looks like, and it probably also goes down to the fact of just I don't know how many years ago now, short, but we were that team just a couple years ago who was coming off of 2-8, 0-10, and are now a pretty good program. So we respect everybody because it's the next one, and it's also a we thing and not a they thing. Meaning, most importantly, we're worried about us. And we're worried about the growth of us, and we're not just preparing to beat Springfield. We go into every single week of how do we become the best version of us, knowing also it's a long season and these other opponents who are winning and what they do and the skills that will be required to defeat them, but also maximize again the best version of this team. Don't make it just good enough to get a win against the opponent you face. So that's kind of the mentality we always preach and go by, and hopefully the results speak for themselves.
I think so, and when you look at this game, Coach, when you start preparing for this team, what do you think the keys are for you guys when you look at this team? I mean, obviously they've got some guys. You said 11 starters on both sides of the ball. Are there any key guys that stood out to you when you started watching film on this team?
I think they have a pretty good mobile quarterback who they will run, but doesn't run as much as Caden Holmes necessarily, but is mobile enough. They're really multifaceted on offense from their personnel. They can bring 3 tight ends in the game, which proposes
Stefanski style offense.
A bunch of gaps, and you got to be right in your run fits, and be really physical. And then they also are in 10 personnel and can get into empty. And no wide receivers, no running backs in the backfield. So that's a whole challenge. Very versatile, exactly. Same thing then defensively. They're a 3-3-5, what we would consider kind of a 3-3-5 or a stack team. So we very rarely, kind of sporadically every year see a team like that, and means they can blitz from anywhere and everywhere. They got 5 guys who really they can blitz in any combination, and then a couple different coverages behind. So, a great week to kind of get back to the basics, not knowing again what their game plan is and what they're going to kind of lean on. So we got to prepare for a lot, and also obviously be ready for a different game plan kind of tweak because of what they come out and maybe want to try to do on one side of the ball.
So quarterback is the guy to look for offensively. What about defensively? Who's the guy that really stands out on the film?
Tough to say exactly one guy. They got a really active outside linebacker who he's the one guy we've noticed on film. They also put out on offense as well because he's 6'4", 225 pounds. And so
he's going to stand out, that's for sure.
So then they put him at wide receiver to throw him some balls and stuff. So guys like him stick out on film. And but it's a collective effort. They're pretty sound in what they do, and they got to keep them under wraps, or else it's going to be obviously a 4-quarter game, and we're going to be in for a long one.
All right. Well, let's talk offense quick. What do you guys have to do offensively in order for you guys to be successful this week?
It's the old adage of taking care of the football. Obviously, coming off the game in which you gave it to the other team 4 times, and get a little bit more explosive and efficient. We were actually pretty efficient in probably great efficiency, but we lacked some explosiveness. And kudos again to a former opponent and their team speed and the ability to make up space quickly to limit that. But at any point, you still got to find a way to be explosive on offense. So that's definitely the key, and that starts with running it well and passing it well. We're always going to be balanced as much as we can, so we don't have to lean too heavily on one side or the other. Really excited for the week we put together so far.
What about defensively, Coach? What do you guys got to do this week defensively in order to be successful? You gave up over 200 yards rushing that last week. Is that a point of emphasis this week?
I wouldn't say we're selling out to stop the run or anything like that. I think we've learned a lot from the film and what we can do well and what we got to get better at. And I wouldn't say what we need to just get rid of, but I think use intelligently some of the defensive calls and stuff. And so learned a ton. And coaching up some of the details and some of our stuff from week 1 into week 2 now. And I think every high school game starts with establishing the run, stopping the run for the most part. When you have 2 balanced teams like us, if they want to run it and throw it a little bit, we want to run it and throw it a little bit. So in my opinion, you want to establish the run on offense or be able to when you need to, and stuff it and stop it on defense when you need to. So if you can do both those things, you're usually going to be pretty successful.
One last thing, rough game for Braden. He probably was beating himself up all weekend. How's he approaching this week, mentality-wise, and is he just putting that behind him? And
he's a kid who's really tough on himself.
I know, because I saw it on the sideline. He's really tough on himself.
He wants to do. Today, for instance, he threw like a 25-yard ball on an absolute rope that was slightly behind the receiver, and he caught it. And he was like, "I should have put that right in front of him so we could continue running with it." Yeah, absolutely. But at the same point, you're allowed to miss by a little, but you can hold yourself critical.
Not in the NFL yet, kid.
Right.
Steps.
We talk a lot about humility isn't talking bad about yourself. It's putting better for yourself. So that just wants to be good. So to be great. And he did a lot of really, really great things. Again, he made some throws from off platform to guys that were right in stride for them to obviously do some really good things, and we did some things to make him look good, and he did some things to make us look good. Obviously just didn't play probably the first half that he wanted to play. I wouldn't say he played terrible, but again, just missing things that he doesn't miss.
He was resilient as always.
Oh yeah,
that's the one thing I will say about that kid. He shows a lot of resiliency, a lot of poise for such a young kid.
He's gonna have a great year.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to it. Any final thoughts, Coach, before we wrap things up? I know you got a cold one sitting here. You got I
don't know who that belongs to. I'll have to find the owner here in a second. But thanks for everything as always, and thanks for tonight.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. All right, Tiffin Columbian head football coach Judd Lutz coming on the program with us. That's going to do it. That's the first episode of the Coach's Corner live here at Benchwarmers Restaurant and Delivery. Make sure you share this episode. Subscribe on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, give us a follow on Twitch. Whatever you got to do, folks, help us share and get the word out. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a great night, everybody.